So if you're watching this after watching the previous video I recorded, which was a look through JB Mortgages at what we created, the little process behind developing that, I'm going to make this video a little bit shorter and snappier, and this is a year and a half forwards. So my process has kind of refined a little bit, and I was really happy with the end result. This is Carrara Aesthetics, which is an aesthetics clinic based on Harley Street, which if you're not from London, I mean, Harley Street is like the place for a medical centre or clinic. So very high profile, and they wanted new brand identity actually when they were starting up, and they're doing really well now. So let's have a look through this project. I'll share my screen with you, and you can see here the cover page for the brand guidelines we created. This actually looks stunning in gold foil, or like a copper foil, which is actually something we use for the business cards. But there we go, that's the end result. So a nice modern monogram, modern elegant text, simple, but let's share the process behind how we came to this, which I'll do with you now. So development, and I have two initial concepts PDFs, if you look on the screen here, and one of these is what I present to the client as your whatever's included in the design package, your 6 initial concepts, if that's what they've gone for. And I write an annotation below each one. I explain what it conveys. I try to present them as well as I can. But at the same time, and I've spoken about this in a previous video, I will share the raw, kind of gritty process behind the scenes. And again, while it could cause some confusion, it could give the client more options to look at, I found they really appreciate it. And in fact, in this case, I believe it was quite helpful for the client to have a look, to see some of the other ideas that I'd begun to explore. So let's look first at the final 6. So this was one concept. Quite simple. It would need a lot of love and refinement for the brand mark, I think, to work for me. Here we are, heading towards the concept we went with, but this is just the A symbol at the moment. And we've taken the stems, or the crossbars, away from the A's in Carrara. And I think it's almost trying to be too modern, trying to be too edgy for this particular brand. That was interesting. Okay, something a little more, I guess, traditionally elegant there with the serif A, but again would need a lot of refinement to work for me. Lotus, abstract lotus, we wanted to explore that. And very loosely, maybe something based around this, if it was nicely geometrically refined. So although I try to present them nicely, these are still very raw concepts, and I explain that to the client. This is just to throw something at you to see how you react. Which idea do you think has the most potential? And if we look through the really raw stuff, now for this project, goodness knows why, but I decided to sketch. I was just in a certain headspace, and I grabbed my complement slips, which actually have this, which I feature through all my branding, this kind of designer's dot grid pattern, which we usually use if you're sketching out concepts. And I thought that meant I could use my complement slips if I needed to kind of sketch the odd concept. But obviously it looks to me now ridiculous to stitch these together and to present this to the client as the initial sketches. Well, we learn from what we do. But actually this worked quite well, just to flesh out some ideas. And you can see from really roughly sketching them, and I don't spend a lot of time doing this at all. You'll see later we've pulled from those sketches and then digitally fleshed out some of the most promising ideas. Exploration of different fonts, which the client can compare. And then we see some of the ideas are taken and I try to flesh them out digitally. I find for type, although sometimes I'll create a custom, I'll customize a font or sometimes even create custom type. For the initial concepts, I don't want to spend that kind of time. If you're fast at doing that, fine, sketch away. But for me, when it comes to fonts, that's something I pull together and I throw that into the design lockup digitally. Some other concepts we fleshed out. And you can see the kind of direction this is taking. There's something there, but it's just too indistinct. It's an A for aesthetics, yes, but it's a little too generic. So it really did need the detail we added later with the C. And this, well, no comment. The Lotus concept, maybe that had some potential to it. Some other ideas I've played with here. So that took us past the initial concepts. Let's look now at what the client selected and how I developed this a bit further. So you can see from the outset, she's kind of identified the concept, and I liked this as well, that we eventually refined and we used. So in my previous video with JB Mortgages, it took a while. We took 3 horses forwards. We developed 3 different concepts and then chose the winner at a much later stage, and time was wasted. So the fact this time we've kind of made a beeline for the chosen concept, and we did play even a year and a half ago. We did play a little with some of the other ideas because the client just wanted to make sure that she picked the right one. But now I will focus almost exclusively on the chosen concept, if it's strong enough. If you need to explore further concepts with the client, then that's fine. So you can see how this is coming along. And I think by this stage here, we've got almost a final brand mark that we'll end up using. It's very simple, but it's effective. And these little mock-ups here, you can find those lots of different sites online, PSD mock-ups. And it just helps both you and the client to see if a concept has legs, if it has the potential to be used in different situations. So I find by showing it like this, printed on paper, embossed, you're making sure it's going to work in different situations and environments, that it's a versatile logo. There's no good coming up with an idea that's going to be invisible or display poorly if you were to try to to engrave it, to foil emboss it. So it's good to try out some of those different outputs. So some more concepts here. This one we wanted to see if there was anything to it. And here, I mean, that got a little crazy, to be honest. Not sure where I was heading on that page. Okay, and a slightly more decorative approach here with the flourishes. Okay, there's something about that I like. Yeah, and mocked up in gold, that actually looks quite effective. But wasn't the outcome we went for. We went for this first concept, the initial gut instinct. So let's go a step further into the final designs. So you can see that's a concept we took forwards. And we look at refining it, playing with, I think playing with the fonts themselves. We were still not sure quite which font to use. And then of course the contrast in size between them. Just making sure the lockup works, that it's balanced. If you compare here, what a difference it makes where it's very blocky, where it's completely squared out, both lines of the text. There's almost no contrast there. To me, optically, that's boring. The design to the right, so much more effective, just by shrinking aesthetics down and giving it almost a diamond-shaped outline to the entire logo lockup. It's so much more effective. It feels better balanced and it feels more interesting. And then of course the bottom right, without the box around the brand mark, very effective. So the client, I think I must have showed something before we went to color, and I really recommend you do that. Add color once you're happy with the concept. Otherwise, you're adding an extra element and the client can't always distinguish why they like something. Is it because of the color they've seen, or is it because of the shape and the form? So save color to the end. Definitely do yourself a favor by doing that. So color is added now, and she actually wanted to see, I think, these 4 variations with different colors. And these are kind of loose pages I like to create at this stage, showing not just the logo but some of the supporting elements. In this case it's just the headings, subheadings, body text and colors, just to see if it's all playing together nicely. Actually love it in this black and white or black and silver. Yeah, and here we start to focus on balancing and why it is that we're more attracted to the variation that works. But some more mock-ups to compare. And that's something I'd mention, even if you feel really sure a particular route is right, you can within reason, you can push your client a little and say you really should do this. But if they don't feel sure about something, if they need to see it to compare, to feel confident, I think it's worth taking the time to do that. If nothing else, just to reassure them. And if you happen to end up at the outcome that you'd expected anyway, well, so be it. But it's worth putting your client's mind at ease. So sometimes factor in the time, just to let them compare and actually show them, rather than tell them, I know what's best. Sometimes show them. It's worth humouring them. So there we are. That's looking absolutely stunning with a gold foil. Elegant, high-end, very appropriate for the kind of clientele they want to attract. And I realised in this project we actually skipped. I didn't show you the research and strategy, which comes before we start sketching any concepts out. So let's have a quick look at that now. If I pop up a folder, so industry examples, as always, I put together a collection of these. And this is a little better presented. I think I put that in a PDF, number it, and I asked the client to indicate their preferences at the start. So it just helps them kind of scope out what's possible, the different ways of doing this, and it kind of shows them the boundaries of what's already been done, and it helps me identify their preferences. It's really useful to do this at the outset. It saves you exploring concepts that have no hope of gaining traction with a client. So definitely use industry examples to begin with. And in research and strategy, you can see, again, if you watch the previous video, the design for this it's looking a lot sharper now. And we're comparing some of the most prominent competitors. We've again got the visual tone and style analysis that we agree on there, the brand messaging. And this time, rather than just those 3 key messages you would have seen in the JB Mortgages video, we now give a clear hierarchy to the brand messaging, as you should do. So we've got a primary message, but then key messages and supporting messages. So there's a very clear, a clear order, a clear hierarchy. So the primary message that's the most important, but these other things, they may come in less noticeable ways, but every one of these messages is building on and supporting that primary message. Brainstorming again. I don't actually do this anymore. A little look at some popular design trends. I don't do that because I feel sometimes it can put the client off, or it can force them into something they don't like, or something that's not best for them, just for the sake of it being trendy. And I think building something that's not going to age quickly, actually sometimes avoiding gimmicky trends is the way to go. And finally, this page on positioning, which is quite important. And for them, you can see exclusive, premium, high end of the market, wide demographic appeal, to be perceived as modern but well established. So sorry, that probably should have come at the beginning of a video, but we've looked at it at the end. After seeing the concept created, that was the strategy that kick-started this. So let's have a final look. How can we end this? Let's give you a final look at the, if I go into final files, at the deliverables. Yeah, here we are. So that's the color tone we went for in the end. We wanted to be able to use it with the same color, either on white or on black. So if a client asks you for that specifically, or perhaps you end up designing it that way, just make sure it's fairly close to a medium gray in terms of a luminosity. You don't want a logo that fades or it's less distinct on white than it would be on black. So if that's a stipulation, you've got to have one color, but it has to work on either background. Please just make sure it's as distinct on either, as you can see is the case with this. If I go back to, that's what we can finish on, the brand guidelines. That's what I was looking for. So there we have it, Carrara Aesthetics. You can see the logo instructions on how to position it should be coming up. There they are. Supporting typefaces, brand colors with tints. And so actually I'm wrong. I thought we arrived at one color to use on either background. We didn't. So there's a strong copper and a medium copper. And I suspect the strong copper, let's flick back. And yes, so the strong copper for use on white, and the medium copper for use on what's not black, it's a matte black. And that must be the reason I recommended that. Business card and a little example, perhaps for a future website or whatever collateral's created, because I don't think we actually included much more collateral than just the guidelines and the business card. But just to give her an idea of the way elements could play together, there's a little watermark using the brand mark in the background there. So that was it. That was presented to the client, and they've been using that ever since. So thanks for watching the video. As always, if you have any questions or even suggestions, I've changed some of my processes even since working on this project. But if you have any suggestions or questions, please write in the comments below, And if you like what you see, please subscribe.